Duke in Altum is the title of this building with so much meaning. And this morning we're going to have a special Duke in Altum theme, reality, something you might be surprised to hear. But actually something that in a way is also normal here. And we're going to hear about it this morning. Invited a special guest, just waiting for him to come in. I'm new at this here, you know, this little bringing somebody on to be a guest to share the live stream this morning. So I'm going to be delayed with this a little bit. Teague, I'm inviting you in again. This is the second time. See if you can. Is there something you have to do on your end? We did a run last night. And it worked. We had downpours of rain yesterday. You can see some of it still gathered here on this cover. Very active thunderstorm. It still says it's adding you, Teague. I don't know what's going on there. There's some little thing. Maybe you need to do something. Is there something you need to say yes to? If you can hear me. Teague is in Jerusalem. I'm not expert on these things, so I'm not sure if there's something else I should do on my end, but I've sent you the invitation a couple of times, Teague. It says you're watching, but I don't see you here yet. There must be some little trick, some little technical there that we need to do. I wonder what it is. Were you able to hear me this morning, people? As I realized my sound was turned off. But maybe that just happened a moment ago when I switched over to check if there was a WhatsApp message. Want to try again, Teague? So I'll just mention a couple of words while we're waiting. Hopefully this is going to come on. It's given me a chance to invite you again. Teague, if you're still there, it says there's no answer from the live guest. So apparently you have to do something. Oh, very good. It says you want to join, so let's try here. Approve. There's something strange going on. It says it's adding you now. Oh, there you are.
There we go. We've beaten technology, Father Kelly. We finally got them.
Okay, that's good. We got you straightened out as well. You're sending not on your straight up.
Okay.
You turned the phone.
Thank you for your patience. I know it could be testing, trying to get these things to work.
I've no idea what the strategy is here. So I need to introduce you to our guests who are live, and to many more who are asleep right now, and who will join, who will hear this later on today. So Teague and I are new to each other, but there's something that brings us together. And I don't know if you allow me to tell a little story, Teague, just to prepare the way. There's lots of things we could talk about, but time goes very quickly. And what I would like to share is something I learned, I'm not sure, 12, 14, 15, 16 years ago here, was the interfaith encounter, an association of groups around the country here in Palestine and in Israel, of Muslims, Jews, Christians coming together. And there's one story that I particularly relished. And I think I've spoken about this sometimes to some, I'm not sure if I think I've done it even online, or maybe at the masses I did it a couple of times as an example during a homily. But there was a group at, I think it was Hebrew University, of students, nursing students, who were specializing in maternity, in the birthing of babies. And in that area, because it's a sacred area of life, each religious outlook has its own sensitivities and its own expressions, and maybe prayers or whatever, depending on how religious people are and so forth. And these women who were studying this career were meeting together, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, to present to each other how each faith community sees and lives that very special moment. And I was deeply touched, because it told me they really want to respect the reality of the other and their sensitivities. And obviously, when they would be working professionally in clinics and hospitals and so forth, or maybe going to visit a family where there's an emergency birth, that they can come with well prepared to know all the sensitivities of the family according to their faith, and that they could deal with that in a wonderfully respectful way. And I was deeply touched by that level of interest and appreciation and respect in that area. So I hope that group is still going, and I haven't had very active contact since I came here to Galilee with the Interfaith Encounter, but I find that very, very interesting. Are you familiar with that story or with that group?
I know of that group, and the Interfaith Encounter Association at present has 126 groups all across the
Oh,
Holy
really?
Land.
When
Whether or not that one,
no, good, keep going.
I was going to say, whether or not that particular one is active currently, I'm not sure, but there's a plethora of different types of groups for different demographics within the interfaith interest sphere, like nurses or women or young people, etc.
Could you give us one or two other examples that maybe that really people raise an eyebrow and say, "Oh, wow, that's interesting"?
Sure. So we have, for example, a Jordan Valley women's group, which is made up of Muslim, Jewish, and Christian women who inhabit the Jordan Valley area. And they meet up on occasion once or twice, sometimes 3 times a month. And basically, it's like having an open forum format for discussion. People are bringing food. It's like an event for the day almost, that people are coming together. But more than just the casual chit chat, which in and of itself is a wonderful thing, people are also sharing their perspective of how living in their community compares with the living in the other. And it's not to say you've got it better than me or why did you do that to myself, but some people are not aware of the challenges that others are facing in different communities. Someone in Mera Diomim, for example, might not realize that there was a new checkpoint put in a certain place, and a person in a different village might realize that there were activities going on in their town that made them feel uncomfortable. So just spreading this word between communities acts as a forum in the region, as well as between women, as well as between faiths. So there's multiple levels of utility when you bring these groups together. That'd be one example.
Yeah, beautiful. And so we need to maybe back up now a little bit. So that's our topic for our conversation this morning. And maybe we just say a couple of words about yourself, Teague. Where do you come from? Were you born on the planet Earth, or did you come from another planet? Or
Now, despite the large shape of my head, I am an earthling. I was born in London, Irish Anglo family, and I've been living in the Holy Land now going on 11 years, mostly in Jerusalem. I also only, so you've known the Interfaith Encounter Association for a long time. I've only been familiar with them from this year. But I've been involved with interfaith initiatives for the whole 11 years that I've been here in terms of a theological interest. But now it's interesting to see it come out in a, person to person, on the ground interest in terms of cooperation. So I help development of various non-profit organizations, including the Interfaith Association.
that's fantastic, Teague. And when did you come here first to the Holy Land?
So, doing a full circle, the first time that I came to the Holy Land was volunteering on a kibbutz called Neve Shalom Wahat al Salam, which translates as the Oasis of Peace. And the concept behind the village, or kibbutz as it were, is that it would be a communal space where Jewish, Muslim, and Christian families, Arab, Israeli, and even I think Bedouin, can come together and live in one community, share one school, share one community center hall. And that was the ethos of the kibbutz.
Yeah, fantastic. And then you obviously got familiar with the culture here. Was there any person in particular that stole your heart?
Any person in particular? Well, this is the incredible thing about living in Jerusalem, is that it truly does feel as much as the rest of the Holy Land like the center of the earth. You've got untold millennia of people passing by this land as conquerors or pilgrims or merchants or travelers. Every person leaves their little grain of sand on the beach here. And so when you just walk around the streets of Jerusalem on any given day, you never know by happen chance what kind of people you're going to bump into and meet.
But I think you met
Um,
somebody at the kibbutz.
Uh, okay, fair enough. Sorry, you're right. I'm going to be castigated now for not having mentioned that. I'm married for 10 years now, and I met my wife on the kibbutz.
Wow.
So yes, of course, thank you for reminding me. That is above and above all else.
So, it's funny, we had a volunteer here in Magdala, and this volunteer was from Mexico. His name was Carlos. And he found an amazing discovery here, which is still at the University of Haifa, and it's a Roman period sword. So that was a sensational discovery. There was always something exciting to share with the pilgrims. So then when the pilgrims would come and visit, and if Carlos was around, I'd say Carlos came to Magdala and he had two major discoveries. And he's still trying to figure out which one was the most important one, because he found a Roman sword in its sheath, but he also found Rachel. And they were the first people to be married at the altar here behind the big window of Ducanaltum. And it was only 50 degrees summer, 1st of August wedding, so it was a little hot.
So there's a competition between her and the sword in their eyes then.
Well, that's the way I put it, I love causing trouble.
Yeah.
So let's go on further then to a little business. Normally, everybody that's following the live stream, most of them are overseas from here. There's a few Israelis and different friends also who see it here in Israel and Palestine. But most people are getting very, very bad news of the region. And they're probably shocked to hear that here in Magdala, for example, our staff comprises Druze, Bedouin by, let's say, racial background. You have Muslims, you have Jews who may be more believing or less believing, usually very secular, maybe atheistic as well, agnostic. You have maybe even one or two messianic ones, and you have Christians of different shades and stripes. And so we have this blessing here at Magdala to have a very varied staff. But people nowadays, with the impressions of the conflict, would seem to think that it's impossible. And you even started a new encounter group in October after the 7th of October.
Correct. Our most recent group that was formed was on the 26th of October.
Wow, the 26th of October, that's exactly just less than 3 weeks after the horrible events that kicked off this brutal moment in history.
And the Interfaith Encounter Association started in 2001 on the cusp of the Second Intifada. So conflict, rather than begetting division within society, often counterintuitively brings people to a position where they question what is the root of their presupposition of the other, and it actually inches people closer towards an understanding rather than against. Obviously, that's not the case in every situation, but as a general trend.
Absolutely. And actually, one of the lines that I'm finding sharing with a lot of people now in the last week or two is that we think that people are good during good times, and in bad times people are all bad. But in fact, we even have in our Catholic tradition, and actually Lutherans as well, in times of the Second World War, for example, we have saints who were canonized, and they actually gave their lives in the context of the atrocities of the Second World War and the concentration camps. And I think of Maximilian Kolbe, who had he rose to extraordinary virtue in Polish man in the concentration camp, Edith Stein, others. We can love God, and we can reach a fullness of humanity when we're really put to the test.
I fully agree, and I'd say that once a crisis does come up, you see the different light in people shine out, because they realize that if not now, when am I going to actually act above and beyond myself and try to make an effort to bring things better? I mean, just on the most low-level proximal example, 2 or 3 days after the war started, when there were still rocket barrages coming on Jerusalem quite often, I went down to the local supermarket, and it's bordering on a neighborhood with an Arab village, technically on the east side of Jerusalem. And you'd walk in and you wouldn't know that there was any schism between Jews and Muslims in the supermarket. They were together. About 1/3 of the customers were Arabic from an Arab neighborhood. 2/3 of them were Jewish Israeli. Most of the people working at the supermarket were Orthodox Muslims. And there wasn't a bad word or a bad glance or a bad vibe at all. In fact, quite the opposite. Everyone was going out of their way to be smiling and warm to one another and show that, despite the background of conflict, this doesn't affect our relationship. If anything, it brings us closer together. And these are things that it's very hard to make a headline in the news when you're looking at optics of bombs and warfare. But it definitely is the story on the ground, at least in places here like Jerusalem and most of the rest of the country as well.
That's amazing, Teague. This is so beautiful to hear, that there's light in the darkness, that the sun rises every day here, even though there's the backdrop of such horrible violence.
Yeah. And a wonderful statistic that came out of a friend of mine who works in emergency services in Jerusalem is he was saying that there was a record number of East Jerusalemites that were in some way engaging in auxiliary aid to the state of Israel, like donating blood, volunteering for emergency services, taking tourniquet courses for first aid. So even though they might not be understandably on the political aim of supporting the war effort, they are supporting the humanitarian effort of the country in ameliorating the effects of the war as well. So people's call to action, if anything, in the country has been one to help rather than to exacerbate the conflict.
This is amazing. This is amazing. Teague, why don't you take a minute to tell us about the new initiative that's starting? And I already posted a link. So once this post is up completely, it will be available to all the viewers. And this is also going to be seen on YouTube. And so the people can find the link there also. What's the new development that Yehuda and you and the leadership in Interfaith Encounter are developing at the very moment?
Sure. So the basic idea of what we're doing is a live event series that will be very much be like an online TV show, where every other week we will be bringing community and religious leaders or people from interest groups like students or women's groups of each different religion. So you'd have one Muslim, one Christian, one Jew coming together physically in person at a roundtable discussion and having something like a podcast format conversation where they'll talk about topical issues that are related to interfaith cooperation in their local communities, and also letting people know about what initiatives there are regionally for them to be involved in, and also fielding questions from the live audience as well. So at the beginning of the war, I noticed that there was a huge uptick in interfaith prayers, where disparate groups or individuals would organize a prayer session between faiths. And that was wonderful to see. And I saw some great speakers and people coming up with great ideas. But unfortunately, one of the drawbacks was that it was always in that COVID Zoom format where you've got 100 little squares and everyone's illuminated by the laptop light in their bedroom, and just didn't engender a whole lot of, aesthetic enjoyment to be involved with, even though the core idea was wonderful. So we're just sort of creating more of a podcast TV type series. So the first series episode that's coming up is on Monday at 7:30 Jerusalem time, and we're having one Jew, one Christian, one Muslim, who are in their own right community leaders in different places in the Holy Land, are coming together in Jerusalem, and they're going to be broadcasting live on Zoom, Facebook, YouTube. And as the series goes on, episode by episode, there'll be different topics, different participants, and we'll also open the call up to various organizations around the Holy Land of different faiths and different interests to bring participants and speakers forward as well. And not only does this allow domestic people in the region here the opportunity to see the let's say, the inspiration and the direction to take in terms of interfaith cooperation, but also hopefully it'll come to a size where we'll have some sort of a feedback for the, let's say, observer world in the Western world or in Africa, Asia, wherever people are interested, to see, as you said before, that despite the non-stop headline optics of bombing and warfare, the actual situation in the Holy Land in terms of intercommunal and interfaith cooperation amongst the vast, vast majority of the population is actually gaining momentum rather than being stalled or having a detriment put upon it.
And one last thing I think we should just cover is that the Interfaith Encounter Association, IEA, is also present outside of Israel and Palestine in other countries.
Correct. There are several chapters outside of the Holy Land. I believe up until this point that most, if not all of them, are in America, but we are definitely open to being able to form chapters in any country, in any place, wherever there's a relevancy and pragmatic ability to be able to coordinate it.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I just want to say a word about the readings today, because our normal fare is, let's say, the mainline topic or track of our thoughts hinges on the daily readings. And today we have two readings that are pertinent. And one of them is, even to our discussion now, the first one is from the Book of Wisdom. And it's addressing the author of the Book of Wisdom, which really then with inspiration is seen as also God himself. He's going to call the judges meaning also the leaders, the political leaders, the community leaders of the world, the national leaders, the empire leaders. They're going to be called to judgment. And that there's no difference between a leader and the smallest, most unknown person on the face of the earth, that they're all God's creation, and that they all are called to act with wisdom and not in selfish interests. And we can have that prayer today. And the second reading is from the Gospel, and it's about the 10 lepers who were healed, which is an event that's remembered in the West Bank, north of the, almost in the Jezreel plain and the hills of Samaria that merge into the Jezreel Valley. And there's still a little church remembering that village event where one comes back and he was a Samaritan. And there we see also, in a certain sense, an interfaith encounter in the gospel where Jesus asked, well, is it only this Samaritan who came back to say thanks? So in certain sense, the unexpected person comes to say thanks. And I would love to say thanks on behalf of all of our participants this morning. They probably also expressed that in their notes, to thank you, Teague, for getting up early and getting out there in this beautiful spot to participate with us and share so much goodness that's happening here, and that people can have a different conversation today at table with their family and friends and in their social media. I think I invite everybody here to share this conversation widely with everybody you think of. Think of your church leader, think of your rabbi, think of your imam, and send this to them and give them hope that all their efforts to build peaceful communities is not in vain, that there are many people working in this degree. They're not alone. And let's see what the Lord can provoke through this wonderful encounter this morning with Teague. Thank you so much.
And I would like to thank you very much for having me on. I know that it was a technical difficulties. If you share this to anybody, you might want to give them a note to say there's a few minutes at the beginning with a technical issue. But no, it's wonderful to have the opportunity to speak with both yourself and see the beautiful sunset in the Galilee.
Sunrise.
I'm sitting sunrise in the Galilee. I'm sitting in Jerusalem at the moment, so I'm not going to see. Oh, I do. It's peeping out the corner, so we can both see the same sun.
If you just touch the screen, maybe we can see the sun over there. Our sun is rising. Our sun is rising. If you just touch where the light is in the screen, you move over to the side a little bit. Maybe where's the sun? To your right or to your left? There. Yeah. If you touch the screen a little bit with your finger, maybe that'll bring up the sun more clearly. Just hit the screen.
Sure.
Hit the screen
it's
with
really
your. It's okay. It's okay. We'll have to practice that a little sometime. Very nice there. Beautiful spot. Beautiful park. Thank you, Ty. God bless you. See you later, alligators, everybody. And then we're going to come on Instagram in a few minutes, Ty. Okay? But a very short note. Good. Okay. God bless you.